Welcome back to Good Day. I'm here with Scuba Steve from the dive shop, and he recently went on a scuba dive to a very interesting place, and we're excited to hear about it this morning.
All right, we're going to talk about our underwater statues on the next segment, but the first thing we're going to talk about is we took a trip as a dive shop to Grenada.
Where is this located?
Grenada, it's in the Caribbean.
Okay.
It's one of the it's part of the West Indies group down there. An interesting thing, and one of the reasons we picked out that island was they have a sunken cruise ship that you can dive on, and so you can go swimming in a pool at 90 feet below the surface.
That's crazy.
So, but a little history about the ship. It was first commissioned in 1939. It was being built during the Second World War, and the ship was completed about 44. Well, not completely. The hull was completed. It moved into a harbor in Italy, or actually in France, the first one. And then they started trying to finish it. It got torpedoed by a German U-boat, and it wasn't raised and actually put into service until 1949, well after the war. And during that life, it was on the cruise line that bought it, used it actually to transport exchange students from the U.S. to Italy or to any points in Europe.
That's not bad.
And then it was bought, that cruise line went out of business, and the Costa line bought it and put it into service, and they ran trips into the Caribbean from Europe, from Italy, and they wound up on one trip into the Caribbean. It caught fire right into the entrance of the harbor in Grenada, and the ship's 600 feet long, so they kind of held up on, like, they started putting the word out. The Grenadians actually didn't have enough fire department to fight a fire on a ship like that. And they called in another vessel, and it had to come from another island in the Caribbean. It took 2 days. By the time it got there, the ship was pretty much starting to sink. So they hooked a line to it and was towing it out of the harbor, because at 600 foot long, it pretty much blocked the entrance to the trade harbor in Grenada. So they were towing it out. It took about 6 hours to move it 2 miles.
Wow.
And it wound up, typhoon kicked up, and it broke the tow line, and the ship turned loose, and it sank in about 160 foot of water.
Wow. And
so now, of course, it's a tall cruise ship, so it's actually a dive site in Grenada. The other picture we had there, this is the ship as it lays listing on the side underwater. That's around 110 feet on the bow there. And then we had one other picture of the ship here. Hopefully they'll be able to bring it up. There we are. Actually, this is the swimming pool.
Oh my goodness.
The little square box you see there, of course, this was 50 years ago. It sank in October 22nd, 1961.
Wow. So
they just had their 50th anniversary of the sinking of the Costa line, and it was named the Bianca C. That's the name of the ship, named after one of the Costa's daughters, Bianca. But nowadays, in 2011, they were going to do a 50th anniversary of the sinking. They didn't think that would be too cool. They wanted the cruise line to come out and do some commemoration stuff, and the cruise line thought that a little negative. We don't like to hear about cruise lines sinking. Although it had a total of 700 people on it, everybody got off safe. There was nobody killed in the fire or in the sinking. But the cruise line didn't want to have that little negative impact. And so 17 days later, after the 50th anniversary, Costa C had another ship accident. If you remember the one in Italy that ran aground.
Oh, yeah.
That was their ship 50 years later. So that's an interesting bit of history. They didn't want negative cruise line publicity, but they created some on their own.
Of course. Now, how ironic would that have been if they said yes to doing it, and then they had all this bad press, and then they had for
real
that's
accident.
Awful. Wow.
Good bit of history there. But our next segment coming up, we're going to talk about some of the big underwater sculpture park in Grenada.
Okay, well, you did the tease for me, so you guys just make sure to stick with us, and we'll get to see some really cool statues underwater when we return with the dive shop. We're going on over to Carrie now. Welcome back on this Monday morning. I'm here with Scuba Steve from the dive shop, and he's been telling us about his recent scuba dive he went on. And now we're going to learn about these statues that are underwater that you guys got to see.
Right. Grenada has a great, it's pretty large, it's over 600 square meters of underwater statue park. Right here we're going to go into a slideshow. This artist here is Troy Lewis. He's a native Grenadian, and he worked in a lot of clay and stuff on the island, and when they started talking about this underwater park, he decided he would contribute some of his artworks, and you see some of those here. These are in the underwater park. It's around 15 to 20 foot deep, so snorkelers can go there and enjoy it. You do not have to scuba dive. This is also Troy Lewis's, one of his statues, Christ of the Deep, when they have basically a twin to that one called Christ of the Abyss down in Key Largo, Florida. The other artist is Jason DeClares Taylor. He was born in Indonesia, worked through a lot of different schools, and these are all concrete sculptures. This is the journalist. He's sitting at a table with a typewriter.
Sitting at a desk.
Just sitting at the table.
Oh my gosh.
So there he is. And they've been sitting here, I guess, for now 15 years.
Wow.
And in fact, this year they just replaced and redid a lot of their exhibits. Here we have our dive master, and that happens to be my wife, Debbie, sitting on a bench there with the dive master. Here's our whole group sitting on the bench. It's kind of hard to see everybody, but this is our group of divers that were at the underwater park that day. And you always hear on the radio or whatever, Captain Ron. There's Captain Ron with my wife, Debbie. Captain Ron's taking it easy on the bench there. And in the background, there's one famous sculpture by Jason Taylor called The Circle of Children. And my wife and I figured we'd fill in the part of two of the underwater sculptures there. So we're just standing there with the sculptures. But the park is really neat. It's kind of unusual. It's kind of getting a little popular because now we have another artist. He's put a couple of statues on a wreck that we dove in Barbados years before, and they're looking at putting some statues on the Vandenberg, which was just sunk off of Key West, Florida 2 years ago.
So many different adventures that you can take under the sea. So if you guys would like to figure out how to have your own adventure, you guys can contact the Dive Shop. Their website is diveshop.pro. Again, Scuba Steve, thanks for sharing that with us this morning. Very neat to see what people can do underneath the water that we don't always get to see. We'll be right back with more Good Day. Stick with us.